Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Harvard won't condemn calls for genocide of Jews. This is not an exaggeration or a twisting of the facts. This is outright truth. Welcome back, folks. This is a dark time. Now, I'm going to show you some video from a congressional hearing. The questioner is Representative Elise Stefanik. I'm in upstate New York in Binghamton, just below Syracuse, above the Pennsylvania line. Congressmember Stefanik represents basically the Adirondack Mountains, which is in the northeast corner bordering Canada. Beautiful area, beautiful area. So the most stunning scenery in the country. You're going to be alarmed by this. So let's watch. Now, this is the first video in a question and somewhat answer session during a congressional hearing. Let's listen.
Dr. Gay, according to the Hillel College Guide, the Crimson Freshman Survey, and even Harvard's own Education Next journal, the population of Jewish undergrads at Harvard has plummeted from roughly 25% in the 1980s to between 5 and 10% now. Why is that?
That is not data that we collect as part of the admissions process, so I can't speak to those numbers or to the trajectory.
So what is the percentage of students who are Jewish at Harvard in undergraduate now?
We do not collect religious affiliation as part of the admissions process.
Do you not?
Total, absolute bull. Of course, their ethnicity, their religion, if they follow the Islamic faith, the Jewish faith, especially Roman Catholics and Christians they don't like. Let's cut through the BS before we out-rounded it. Now, we haven't got to the part where condemning calls for genocide on Jews yet. This is just the beginning of the questioning. Let's listen on.
Rely on data collected by Harvard Hillel, which you visited for the first time after October 7th. I'll just be honest with you. When I was a freshman, I enjoyed going to Harvard Hillel and had the opportunity to celebrate Shabbat dinners with my fellow undergrads. The fact that it took you until after October 7th to go to Harvard Hillel is unacceptable. Yield back.
Now we're going to get to the crux of the matter, the crux of this video. The lawyer-like weasel words that they use and the robotic 3x5 card answers is telling. Folks, conservative guys like me, and I used to be a Democrat. I was a local elected official. And I sensed what was coming up in the Democrat Party. There was always that small percent that were anti-Semitic. They were the true racists in actuality. But it was a small percent. And when I left the party over 10 years ago, it was growing. And now it's grown where this side of the party, the Democrat Party, is now in charge of it. Let's listen on.
Dr. Kornbluth, at MIT, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate MIT's code of conduct or rules regarding bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
If targeted at individuals, not making public statements.
Yes or no?
Now,
Calling for the genocide of Jews.
Think about that for a moment. When they make a general statement of targeting of Jews for genocide, it doesn't go against their code of conduct at MIT. But if they say it on an individual person, then it does. Think about that for a moment. Stop the video and think about what she just said. You make a general statement about a certain ethnic group or religious group, that's okay. But as an individual, now what would happen if we substitute the word trans for the word Jews? Would it be against your code of conduct at MIT, president of MIT, that we said, I represent girls' sports at MIT, women's sports. And the only way we can feel safe is if we eliminate trans people. There would be outrage of huge proportions. And of course, I don't advocate that. That's ridiculous. But it's in essence what it is. And if she would think she would say, well, as a general statement, no, but as an individual trans person, yes. No, she wouldn't. This shows the hypocrisy of these leftist progressives. And wait, it gets worse.
Does not constitute bullying and harassment?
I have not heard calling for the genocide for Jews on our campus.
But you've heard chants for intifada.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
Think about what she just said. I'm going to play that again. I'm going to go back and I'm going to play that again. That is an unbelievable answer to a basic question. This exposes the progressive left for what they truly, truly are. Racists. Racists.
I've heard chants, which can be anti-Semitic depending on the context, when calling for the elimination of the Jewish people.
So there is context on the elimination of the Jewish people. Look at the lady on the left in the back with her mouth going like, you got to be effing kidding me. Under what context is it okay for the elimination of the Jewish people? This is what these people have always believed, and conservative people like myself, I got a small channel, so I don't have that much effect, but people with large channels, people on conservative news, talking heads, if you will, we've been saying this for years about Democrats, the progressive Democrats. They've all been laughed at. Conspiracy theory nuts, it's just politics. Under what context is it okay for the elimination of Jews? Apparently there must be. And there it is. There's the rot. And there's the cancer. This is unbelievable. This is some of the top 8 schools in the country, if not the world. And this is what the president of that college believes.
So those would not be according to the MIT's code of conduct or rules.
That would be investigated as harassment if pervasive and severe.
What is more severe than eliminating you from the earth? What is more severe than genocide on a certain ethnic or religious group? What could be more severe? This is cancer. This is rot. And we all know if cancer isn't treated or cut out, it kills the host. In this case, the host is the United States of America.
Ms. McGill, at Penn, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's rules or code of conduct? Yes or no?
Now look at her smile, smirk like this is a joke. It's not a joke. They're teaching some of the most educated and smartest people in this country, our youth especially. And they're filling them with this hatred and nonsense. And this passes on to the rest of the country. Just like cancer left unchecked will go everywhere in your body, this left unchecked will destroy the country.
If the speech turns into conduct, it can be harassment, yes.
If the speech turns into conduct, which means the only way we can act and goes against our rules, if you do something physically, conduct. She's saying verbally, no problem. But until you physically act, when she says conduct, she means physical. Let's just cut through the crap. She's a very educated woman. Until you do something physically to a student who's Jewish, it doesn't violate our rules.
I am asking, specifically calling for the genocide of Jews, does that constitute bullying or harassment?
If it is directed and severe or pervasive, it is harassment.
So the answer is yes.
It is a context-dependent decision.
A context-dependent decision again. Of course, these are all advised by lawyers. Context-dependent. Under what context is the genocide of Jewish people okay? That's the question that should have been asked. Now look at the lady on the left there, right over her right shoulder, the president's right shoulder. She's looking at her like, what the F are you talking about? What are you doing? Maybe that's even one of her lawyers going, what are you doing? But they can't help themselves. Why? Because this is what they really, truly believe in their hearts.
Congresswoman.
It's a context-dependent decision. That's your testimony today. Calling for the genocide of Jews is depending upon the context. That is not bullying or harassment. This is the easiest question to answer yes, Ms. McGill. So is your
If it-
testimony
if
that
it-
you will not answer yes?
If it if
Look at her smiling like this is a joke. Some academic exercise or debate in her school. This is nonsense. These people are evil, plain and simple. How do they get in charge of these things? I'll tell you the truth. I blame conservative-minded people, everyday Americans. Knowing this has been happening for decades plus, basically since the 60s, but really has been really bad the last 30 or 40 years. In my lifetime, I'm 67. This has been going on. And now we're in the second or third generation of this cancer. And it's spread everywhere. She thinks it's funny.
the
Yes
speech
or no?
becomes, if the speech becomes conduct, it can be harassment.
It can be harassment. It can be. In other words, conduct is physical. Let's just cut through the crap. What do we have to do? Rewrite a new dictionary? Unbelievable. And she thinks it's funny.
Yes.
Conduct meaning committing the act of genocide? The speech is not harassment? This is unacceptable, Ms. McGill. I'm going to give you one more opportunity for the world to see your answer. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Penn's code of conduct when it comes to bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
It can be harassment.
It can be harassment. Now, here's the thing. I'm pretty much a free speech advocate. Free speech is about hearing things that you find disgusting and despicable. And unfortunately, that's part of the equation. But what I'm going to point out here is the hypocrisy of this whole thing. If this was said about, say, trans people or women or any other ethnic or religious minority, if this was said about Islamic people, now they would probably go along with the Christians, they wouldn't care. But they're picking and choosing of what they seem to be supposed free speech, and non-free speech is telling. It's telling. They stifle speech they don't like and call it harassment and call it hate speech. And there's even hate speech laws, but I think are ridiculous. But that's a different issue. Whatever they consider the side that they're on that's being criticized, it's hate speech. Whatever side they're against, in this case, Jews, it's open for interpretation. Isn't that interesting?
The answer is yes. And Dr. Gay, at Harvard, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Now, before we continue, I want to say that Congress member Stefanik went to Harvard University. So she's very familiar with the campus and the way things are done there.
It can be, depending on the context.
Depending on the context. Again, I'll ask the question, and she already asked the other college professor, under what context is calling for the elimination and genocide of Jewish people okay? What she's saying, it depends on the context. That means some of that might be okay and not against their rules of hate speech, bullying, and harassment. But she can never explain that. Why? Because she doesn't consider Jews to be a protected class. This is the famous progressive leftist mantra of oppressed and oppressor. Maybe years ago, Jews in academia were considered the oppressed, but no longer. Same with Asians. Whether they be Asian Indian or other Asians, they used to be a protected minority. But since they're doing so well in society, Asian Indians, Asians, Jews are doing so well in society as a general rule, they're not the oppressed anymore. They become the oppressors. And they see everything through that lens.
What's the context?
Targeted as an individual, at an individual.
It's
We are
targeted at
pervasive.
Jewish students, Jewish individuals. Do you understand your test?
No, they're not. To her, making a general statement about Jews is okay. but going against one Jewish student isn't. And that's the wiggle room, the weasel room they use, because they're trying to hide their true intentions and what they really believe. But they're being exposed, finally.
Testimony is dehumanizing them? Do you understand that dehumanization is part of anti-Semitism? I will ask you one more time. Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules of bullying and harassment? Yes or no?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric. When it
And is it
crosses into
anti-Semitic rhetoric?
Anti-Semitic rhetoric, when it crosses into conduct that amounts to bullying, harassment, intimidation, that is actionable conduct, and we do take action.
So the answer is yes, that calling for the genocide of Jews violates Harvard Code of Conduct, correct?
Again, it depends on the context.
It does not depend on the context. The answer is yes, and this is why you should resign. These are unacceptable answers across the board.
Now let's listen to another small clip with Congressmember Stefanik and some presidents of these major universities. This is incredibly important, folks. You should watch all of this.
Dr. Gay, did anyone contact you about flying the Israeli flag over Harvard Yard?
Yes.
And the decision was made not to allow the flag to be flown over Harvard Yard?
It's been standard protocol at the university for years to only fly the American flag unless we have a visiting dignitary.
So the decision was made to allow the Ukraine flag to be flown over Harvard Yard?
That was a decision that was made by my predecessor as an exception to a long-standing rule.
So it was an exception. So you made an exception for the Ukrainian flag, but not the university made an exception for the Ukrainian flag, but not the Israeli flag.
That was a choice made by my predecessor.
Are you aware that there are stickers that are placed on Harvard University Dining Services food calling for Israeli apartheid? It says, warning, Sabra funds Israeli apartheid and the murder of Palestinians. Is that acceptable?
I can assure you that we have strong disciplinary processes when there are violations of our rules.
Again, I'm going to intervene and say, what would happen if that was either through gay or lesbian or trans? And instead of Jews in Israel, it was about trans and LGBTQ plus people. Think about that for a minute. She would be livid. The people would be hunted down that put those stickers on the college campuses and made examples of, thrown out of the university, and their lives would be ruined. Ruined. But she plays dumb like, well, you know, I've heard of it. We're checking it out, and if we find anything, we'll definitely do some disciplinary action. This whole thing she is so full of, it's incredible. Let's listen on.
And this is a violation of the rules?
I can't see that very clearly, but...
Are you not aware of the stickers being placed on the food items provided to Harvard students?
I do recall an episode like that.
And
Well, she does recall the episode, but she couldn't see what was on the sticker. Remember, these people under oath, but here's the problem. They're arrogant and they're cocky, they're conceited. They know that the Republicans are spineless. And if they are caught lying under oath, they will not be held accountable and be prosecuted. That's the problem.
there are disciplinary actions ongoing?
Given students' privacy and FERPA, which I'm sure you know well, I will not say more about these particular cases other than to say that disciplinary processes are underway.
Disciplinary processes are underway. Just like the FBI does. We can't discuss this. We can't discuss money coming from overseas accounts into Hunter Biden and President Biden and many of his family members. We can't discuss the fact that we're targeting Christians who are anti-abortion, pro-life. We can't because all these investigations are going on, so I can't answer you. It's a lie. I know this video is running long, but this is incredibly important. Here's another clip.
Does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules on bullying and harassment?
The rules around bullying and harassment are quite specific, and if the context in which that language is used amounts to bullying and harassment, then we take action against it.
And who gets to decide that? The university or whatever board they appoint. And here's the point. Here's the fine point of this. Like I said earlier in the video, if this was about African Americans, or we'll say even let Mexican or Hispanic people, Africans from the continent coming in unlawfully, trans people, the list is endless for them of these so-called oppressed people of the world. They would be an outrage. But Jews, Asian Indians, and Asians, for some reason, aren't oppressed anymore because they're doing so well as a group in this country. And they see everything through the oppressor lens. Let's listen on.
Can you say yes to that question of does calling for the genocide of Jews violate Harvard's rules on bullying and harassment?
Calling for the genocide of Jews is anti-Semitic.
So yes.
And that is anti-Semitic speech. And as I've said,
And it's
when
a yes.
speech crosses into conduct,
And it's a yes. I've asked the
when
witnesses.
speech crosses into conduct, we take action.
Yeah, they take action, right. How many students have been thrown out so far? None. Now, this is an interesting question. This isn't about, well, maybe indirectly, but this isn't about anti-Semitic rhetoric or action. But it's interesting. This is about money.
Harvard receives funding from foreign entities and governments which support its Middle East Studies Department, correct?
We receive funding from a variety of sources because we have alumni from...
See, they won't answer. The answer is yes, obviously, and everybody knows it. But this is a congressional hearing under oath, so they want it for the record.
all over the world.
But that is correct, right? The Middle Eastern Studies Department?
We receive funding from
It's a
various
yes.
sources.
We receive funding from, they're like little robots. And they are. They are little robots. Little widgets that walk around saying and doing the exact same things.
Or no? Are you not aware where the Middle Eastern Studies Department receives funding?
We receive funding from
I
various
am asking
sources.
you a yes or no.
Look at her smiling like she thinks this is a joke. I'm not going to answer you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
No question. You are under oath in front of the United States Congress. You are giving lip service provided your attorneys. It's a yes or no question. Harvard receives funding from foreign entities and governments which support its Middle Eastern Studies Department, correct?
We have alumni all over the world, and we benefit
So the
from
answer is
their
correct.
friends and their
Yes?
philanthropy.
Yes? The answer is correct?
We receive support
And
from our
that's a-
alumni from all over the
and
world.
that's a-
She won't answer it, but everybody knows it's yes. But she won't say, well, I never said yes on the record. So it's not necessarily yes. It may be, but I'm not going to say.
Or-
individuals.
And what amount of support is that reported to the federal government?
I'd have to actually look at our filings.
You don't know? As the president of the university, you don't know?
Not that particular number.
It's
No, I don't.
$1.5 billion over the past 3 years. Are you aware of that?
I don't know if that is the correct number, but that's the number you've shared.
Has Harvard reported all
Regular
of the
order.
federal... Oh, my time. Harvard receives funding from foreign entities.
Now, this portion of the hearing, Congressmember Stefanik substitutes what I said earlier. Either trans, or in this case, African Americans instead of Jews. And the answer is interesting. Let's listen.
Ms. Stefanik, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Dr. Gay, a Harvard student calling for the mass murder of African Americans is not protected free speech at Harvard, correct?
Our commitment to
It's a
free
yes or no
speech-
question. Is that corrected? Is that okay for students to call for the mass murder of African Americans at Harvard? Is that protected free speech?
Our commitment to free speech
It's a yes or no
extends-
question.
She won't answer it.
Let me ask you this.
She
You are
refuses.
president of Harvard, so I assume you're familiar with the term intifada, correct?
I've heard that term, yes.
And you understand that the use...
And she's smiling again. You can't touch me. I'm more powerful than you, and I'm more insulated than you because I'm a minority. And I'm the president of one of the most prestigious colleges in the world that's almost 400 years old. And you're only a measly little Congress member. and a Republican on top of it. So I don't care what you think. You can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man.
Use of the term intifada in the context of the Israeli-Arab conflict is indeed a call for violent armed resistance against the state of Israel, including violence against civilians and the genocide of Jews. Are you aware of that?
That type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
And there have been multiple marches at Harvard with students chanting, quote, "There is only one solution, intifada revolution," and, quote, "globalize the intifada." Is that correct?
I've heard that thoughtless, reckless, and hateful language on our campus. Yes.
But here's the question. Does it fall under your fake hate speech rule? It only falls under your hate speech rule, and disciplinary action, and action at all, is only if it's against someone you think is oppressed. If someone you think is the oppressor, you do nothing, and that makes you a Class A hypocrite.
Yes.
So based upon your testimony, you understand that this call for intifada is to commit genocide against the Jewish people in Israel and globally, correct?
I will say again, that type of hateful speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Do you believe that type of hateful speech is contrary to Harvard's code of conduct, or is it allowed at Harvard?
It is at odds with the values of Harvard.
It is at odds with the values, and there's the slippery legalese the lawyer told her to say. Values change all the time. It does not fall under our hate speech criteria. Why? Because we think the Jews are the oppressors. It's that simple.
Can you
But
not
our
say here that it is
values
against the
also-
code of conduct at Harvard?
We embrace a commitment to free expression, even of views that
That's a lie. That's a lie. Harvard University. I forget where I saw it. There was a poll done, or checking out universities that let speakers go on for free speech. And the poll was rated 100 means you were wide open to free speech on your university campus, and 0 meant you didn't tolerate anything you didn't like as a speaker to come to that university and speak to the students. Guess where Harvard fell under that 0 to 100? And those of you that picked 0, you're the winner. 0. They do not. They only allow free speech when they agree with it. And the same thing is on the internet. And this website does it as well. And that's why they want Elon Musk gone, because they don't have Twitter anymore to filter out what they don't like.
that are objectionable, offensive, hateful. It's when that speech crosses into conduct that violates our policies against bullying, harassment,
Does that speech
and
not
intimidation.
cross that barrier? Does that speech not call for the genocide?
Now she's pissed, and I really don't blame her, because she's frustrated because they won't answer the question, but she probably knew they wouldn't. But she went to Harvard. She's got some skin in the game on this question here. She probably has a lot of good memories from Harvard, maybe some bad ones too, but she was young and probably had a lot of great experiences there. And she's outraged that the college she went to would put up with this. And then on top of that, the frustration of being smirked at and lied to.
Of Jews and the elimination of Israel.
When
You
that speech-
testify that you understand that is the definition of intifada. Is that speech
speech-
according to the code of conduct or not?
we embrace a commitment to free expression.
Look, she's smirking again. You can't do anything to me. I'm untouchable. I'm untouchable. I'll still make my $1 million+ a year, plus have an incredible retirement package. I will live rich and very well off while I spread this cancer throughout our country to our highest places of education. And there's nothing you can do.
Expression and give a wide berth to free expression, even of views that are objectionable
You and I
outrageous
both know
and
that's not the
offensive.
case. You are aware that Harvard ranked dead last when it came to free speech. Are you not aware of that report?
As I observed earlier, I reject that characterization.
It's the
of our
data shows
campus.
it's true. And isn't it true that Harvard previously rescinded multiple offers of admissions for applicants and accepted freshmen for sharing offensive memes, racist statements, sometimes as young as 16 years old? Did Harvard not rescind those offers of admission?
That long predates my time as president.
Yeah. Well, that is your policy as well. We went after people that said some things that were really offensive that we didn't like or agree with. But if they went after and said offensive things about Jews or other individuals or races we consider oppressors, it's okay. You're a hypocrite. I don't know how to solve this. I really don't. Let's listen on.
But you
So I can't
understand
speak.
that Harvard made that decision to rescind those offers of admission.
I have no reason to contradict the facts as you present them. here.
Correct, because it's a fact. You're also aware that a Winthrop House faculty dean was let go over who he chose to legally represent, correct? That was while you were dean.
That is an incorrect characterization of what transpired.
What's the characterization?
I'm not going to get into details about a personnel matter.
Well, let me ask you this. Will it
Oh, I see. That's a mischaracterization. Well, then correct me then. What was it? I can't tell you. I can't get into it. Just like Chris or I can't get into it because it's under investigation. I can't get into this because it's personnel issue. But you're wrong, but I don't have to prove you're wrong. I can just say you're wrong. Sounds like 5-year-olds in a playground.
admissions offers be rescinded or any disciplinary action be taken against students or applicants who say, from the river to the sea or Intifada, advocating for the murder of Jews?
As I've said, that type of hateful, reckless, offensive speech is personally abhorrent to me.
Nobody gives a damn what you consider personally abhorrent to you. Under your rules, you go after conservative, you go after Catholics, you go after whites, you go after all the individual groups and religions you don't like. But the ones you do like, you get to say hateful things and you just find it offensive. Or the other ones, you take action. You're a hypocrite.
And today that no
When-
action will be taken. What action will be taken?
When speech crosses into conduct that violates our policy,
Yeah, she's smiling and smirking again. This is a little 355 card answer they gave all the presidents. And our lawyers told us that if we say this, we're not lying under oath. So your oath in this whole entire hearing isn't worth the pile of crap. That's what they're really saying.
including policies against bullying, harassment, or intimidation, we take action, and we have robust disciplinary processes
Liar.
that allow us to hold individuals accountable.
What action has been taken against students who are harassing and calling for the genocide of Jews on Harvard's campus?
I can assure you, we have robust
What
disciplinary
actions have been
processes
taken? I'm not
with
asking.
actions underway.
I'm asking what actions have been taken against
Given-
those students.
Given students' rights to privacy and our obligations under FERPA,
They're not asking you to name the person by name. They're just asking you who, not who, but how many, how much action and what has happened to students. You don't have to name them. And that's what the lawyers told them to say. That way they can say F you, and you can't hold me in contempt for not answering your questions.
I will not say more about any specific cases other than to reiterate that processes are ongoing.
Do you know what the number one hate crime in America is?
I know that over the last couple of months, there has been an alarming rise of anti-Semitism, which I understand is the critical topic that we are here to discuss.
That's correct. It is anti-Jewish hate crimes. And Harvard ranks the lowest when it comes to protecting Jewish students. This is why I've called for your resignation. And your testimony today, not being able to answer with moral clarity, speaks volumes. I yield back.
And there you have it. And there you have it. This is unbelievable, folks. It truly is. I don't know what to say. I really don't. Besides what I've already said. Now, this video has gone way longer than it should have, but there's so much important stuff here, folks. I thank you for sticking it out this long. They think this is a joke. They think they're untouchable. And for a long time, they have been. To spread this hate and this just un-American. The Democrat progressives, or the progressive Democrats, depending on how you look at it, are the true racists. Always have been. Always have been. And they were a very tiny minority when I was a Democrat years and years ago as a local elected official. I left the party over a decade ago because I saw this was coming. I saw this was coming here at the local level, here in upstate New York. My town's only about 45,000. We're not that big, and I saw it then. And now it's mushroomed, and it's everywhere. Everywhere. They're being exposed. Is that enough? Is it enough? But I want you to go back and play some of the answers. Some of the answers. If you substituted trans or African American or any other supposedly what they consider oppressed people instead of Jews, the answer would have been different. So draw your own conclusions. If it's okay to do and say these things concerning Jews and genocide, but not anybody else they consider oppressed, who do they really dislike and hate? You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to figure it out. Again, thank you for taking so long to watch this entire video. I think this is important and groundbreaking. And until the next time, goodbye and good luck.